So I'd like to call this regular meeting of Lane County Board of Commissioners together. Today is Wednesday, September 16th, 2015, and we are here for a work session under Commissioner Davis, and we have a presentation from River Road Park District. But before we get started with that, I thought it might be useful if we go around the room real quickly and do some self-introductions, because I'm sure there's some people here that don't know each other. So I am Jay Bozovich. I am the current chair of the Lane County Board of Commissioners. Peggy Stewart, East Lane County Commissioner.
Pete Sorensen, Lane County Commissioner, South Eugene District.
Sharon Green, Director at River Road.
John Winke, Vice Chair of the River Road Park.
Rob Dennis Durfee on the Finance Committee.
Warren Hannon, Board Member, River Road Park. Ron Hellingston, Board Chairman, River Road Park District.
Kurt Kennel, Board Member, River Road Park. Neil Wygant, Superintendent of River Road Park.
Chris Pryor, Eugene City Council, have been interacting on this meeting.
Neil Leonard, Special Districts Association of Oregon. Pat Farr, Board of County Commissioners, North, which is North Eugene District 4. Sid Lycan, Lane County Board of Commissioners, Springfield District.
Seymour Rice, County Administrator.
Commissioner Newman, County Board Director.
Carl Schuessler, Public Works Assistant Director.
Thank you, everybody. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Dale, and I think he's going to bring you a bit of history.
How serious is that? I've got a short presentation, and at the end of it, hopefully it'll open some dialogue between the two boards, and we can see where it takes us. So I want to thank you all so much for this opportunity to work together to tackle this complex and portable issue pertaining to the future of parks and recreation. It is our goal to find a means of sustaining and expanding parks and recreation services for the future. There's a number of points. The first one I'll start with is the historical background of the Park District. There's two parts to the history of this challenge. Rivermont Park, that was established in 1955.
Yeah, we'll give you a little hand there.
Oh, sweet.
Now we need to click.
I just want to, just click it.
Right, or you can use the arrow button on the keyboard. All right, go forward and back.
With this arrow key.
All right. How do you do that? 21st century, we're moving. Yes. That's how you do that. We're all learning. Yeah, you all taking notes or what? Historical background of the Park District. There's two parts to the history of this challenge. Rivermont Park, that was established in 1955, has been an active parks and recreation community center serving the River Road community. As time passed and the building permit process was changed from county governance to city governance, annexations to the city of Eugene were creating a financial burden on the operation of the River Road Park District. In 1983, the Eugene City Council and the River Road Park District Board created a 20-year agreement that would sustain the Park District. It allowed the Park District $2.50 for $1,000 was assessed valuation for any property that was annexed into the city. And in turn, the Park District would treat those properties as in-district residents. Look at that. All right. In 2003, the agreement was modified by the city to give the flat rate of $100,000, which was approximately $20,000 less than the last fiscal year that the first agreement was in place. In 2008, the city chose to not renew any further monetary contract, forcing the Park District to go to voters for a 37 cents per thousand 5-year serial levy, which was passed both in 2008 and again in 2013. The city of Eugene has historically had a great park and recreation system. It seemed logical that at some point that River Road Park District would be absorbed into the city of Eugene Park. However, in 1997, property tax measures were voted into place that limited taxing agencies to not exceed 3% each year. This was the beginning of what would be a formidable challenge for all agencies, but especially for cities with multiple departments. As time moved forward, shrinking resources created a vacuum for essential services such as fire, police, and public works to take ever-increasing amounts of the budget, moving unessential services such as park and recreation and library services. Even though they are popular services, we're have to struggle to keep up. When the recession hit in 2008, it was very apparent that the non-essential services of all cities, not just Eugene, were being asked to cut back or stop service completely for park maintenance, library hours, and at one point even pools were being examined as possible cuts. As stated in the history, all agencies have had to re-examine and prioritize what they can do and how well they can do it. It is a challenge for both cities and districts to continue to provide quality recreation opportunities and maintain aging facilities with limited budgets. But the challenge reaches way farther than the here and now. How can Park and Recreation move forward to build new community centers, pools, and parks? Be able to not only build them, but maintain them and staff them in a suitable fashion. There are no easy answers here. Eugene is currently conducting a survey of city residents to find out what people want for recreation for the next 10 years.
You're not keeping, I don't think you're keeping that.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, those are just the whole points. It's all good.
He's not reading us what we got already.
That's right. Yeah, I would just hand you this, and we'll go out of the room. There are no easy answers here. Eugene is currently conducting a survey of city residents to find out what people want for recreation for the next 10 years. This is a great start. But the piece of the puzzle that will be hardest to solve will be able to obtain those goals financially. In River Road, we are currently sustainable. However, we are moving serial levy to serial levy to stay that way. For River Road Park to expand into the future will take expansion of the district's tax base and service area, which at this point is not possible due to restrictions of the metro plan. Last September, River Road Park and... Last September, River Road Park District extended an invite to a large number of public officials and interested community members to an educational forum about special districts as they pertain to parks and recreation. Presenters from 4 successful park districts were represented: North Clackamas Park and Recreation District, Bend Park Recreation District, Fulton Hills Parks and Recreation District, and Willamette Lane Park and Recreation District. Each gave an overview of how their district worked and what types of challenges they faced, as well as the success they were having. A couple of interesting common threads became apparent. They were all successful and sustainable even through the recession, reason being that they did not have to share their tax dollars with any other agency or department. They shared that tough choices had to be made concerning fees or priorities for capital projects, but they were able to maintain a good balance for their district residents. The only thing that rang true for all the park districts was that since they had total control of their budget, they could plan for their future. A good example of this is what is going on in Willamette Lane right now. A special service district for Parks and Recreation for the Eugene urban growth boundary is one possible solution to the challenges that both Eugene and River Road are facing for the future of Parks and Recreation. There are many questions that need to be answered. What area would be served? What would the tax rate be? How will compression affect the taxing area? What would happen to existing employees of both affected agencies? All big questions and ones that need to be addressed before anything can be considered to put before the voters. A feasibility study should be done to see if this is indeed a viable solution. Special Districts of Oregon has pledged their support for this idea. We have also had a series of meetings with local officials and interested community members regarding this concept. We are here today to discuss the possibility of the county joining us in this feasibility study. And with that, they've lived through. I'll speak first for the board. We have met with a large number of public folks and community members and, elected officials, and there are no solutions for what's going on. With essential services being eaten away, by cities having trouble making bank on the end of it, and we're starting to lose our taxation. there is no easy solution. Where I keep looking at the future. What are we going to be doing in 20 years? How are we going to sustain parks and recreation, build new community centers in Santa Clara, build new community center in Churchill? How are we going to get there with that and sustain it? Not just build it, but to have a viable thing. And I keep looking at the districts that I've mentioned, and the districts all have been successful because they can plan for the future and they can sustain it. The money that comes into a district stays in the district. So, it's a heavy lift. It's one of those really, really heavy things, and the city has looked at it. I don't know how interested they are, but I think that it's a possible solution, and I think it should be examined. But what we're running up against is we need hard numbers. And speaking with Chris and Claire and a number of members of the committee that we talked with, we need hard numbers to determine if it's even a viable solution. I can't do that alone. I need some help. The special districts will pledge some money for that, and we're going to need more than that. And if it's not a viable solution, I'll pack my bag and shut up. But I think it should be looked at. So I'll open up to that.
Mr. Sorensen.
Thinking about the problems that we have in Oregon, where we had these three big ballot measures back in the late 90s, and the assumption was we could drop the level of property taxation and for everybody sort of freeze their property rates and then provide an artificial 3% annual increase on that reduced base. For Lane County, that was a disaster because we were one of the counties in the United States, of the 300 or so forest counties in the United States, we were number one. And so we had a very low base because we had 20 years of timber revenue between roughly the 70s and the 90s, and by the 90s the timber revenue was gone. We had not raised our base. State voters froze our base. So of Oregon's big counties, we're by far the least funded. And I also thought about, in preparation for this work session, just how different the recreation and park services are within the Eugene-Springfield area. We've got you guys over on the west side, and then our friends in Springfield with their district. Now, I don't know what their, Chris might know this off the top of your head, what is their rate?
I don't know the rate.
$2.20, something like that. Anyway, they're like about $1 per thousand ahead of Lane County in terms of dollars. So the recreation services there in Springfield are really the envy of anybody that's an advocate for park and recreation. They've got a phenomenal swimming pool, phenomenal senior center. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And that's because really, $1.25 you pay Lane County, you're going to pay $2.25 to the Willamette Lane Park and Recreation District. So I kind of see this as, and I just want to ask your opinion. What do you think of the idea of extending the service area of Willamette Lane Park and Recreation area to your district?
We would consider it, but I've talked to Bob at length about that. They have no interest in doing that. They've got a big thing going. It's a big thing right now, and
it's getting bigger.
Yeah, it is, and I don't think that they have, at this point, don't have any desire to look into that.
What if we were to throw in the fact that Lane County Parks, which I know isn't the full topic of this discussion, but we have the same problem there. We used to put visitor dollars into it. We used to put car rental dollars into it. We have a big task force looking into whether or not we're going to raise money by bigger events in Lane County Parks. There was huge pushback to that. What that looks like, where they're headed as far as advice. Where else could they go? They don't have any other revenue. So I was just thinking, well, maybe we should think about trying to just use the calamity you're facing. By the way, I think you've understated how serious this problem is for you guys, because I think that as the annexations continue and you lose more of your base, and even though you had an agreement that went for 20 years, that was a transition to something. Well, the something is now, and it's not really going to help your Park District residents. So I'm just curious, how big of a discussion would you be interested in, or is it just a matter of, well, hey, we want to do this study and we need some money to help do the study? Go ahead, Mike.
No, the basic problem is people of River Road have no political representation, period. The city controls the building permits. Look at Eco on River Road. They dumped a 3-story building in the back balconies looking into the backyards of single-family residences. Totally crazy. And we need representation, and we need to get control of River Road, Santa Clara out of the hands of the city of Eugene, because they're just beating us up. And they're going to, every time you annex a piece of property, the taxes on every other parcel go up. And that's why we have the highest special districts rate in the state of Oregon. Not because of anything we did, it's because of the city. You know, they get $400,000 from property that they've taken out of the district. They wouldn't give us $100,000, and they provide no service. You know, they get $1.2 million out of Santa Clara. And quite frankly, I don't understand why the Churchill area isn't just raising hell because they have no operating parks and recreation facility in their area. If they had been in a special district, they would have an inside pool and a rec center and all the things that people really think they need. But unless we're going to be left to drift out to sea, we need the help of the county, because we can't afford to have the enemy determining where the permits are. One other thing, 3 bridges were supposed to be built from River Road, and 1 from River Road and 2 from Santa Clara. The city, I'm sure, has killed those. They're not interested in them. All they're doing is they're mining for money, and they're doing a fairly damn good job.
The neighborhood group killed them. When the River Road neighborhood group, when it was in the 90s, when we were looking to build the bridge across, and the neighbors got together and provided very heavy testimony to the city council. And because a few people said a lot of loud words, the council changed its mind on moving forward with the bridges. It stabbed me in the heart.
That was because Bobby Green had suggested it and implemented it, and also because there were 2 bridges on each side of it, and we needed more down in Santa Clara because that's where urban growth was expanding. And that's one of the reasons why that was brought up. And so Santa Clara, viable, for Santa Clara, but for that, at that time, it was not feasible, you know.
So, if I can get a little bit of control back in the meeting here, I had Commissioner Stewart McHugh and Commissioner Lycan following, so Dale, that was responded. So Dale has to respond.
You know, you can feel the history that's been here. Wayne's expressing it well, but you know, at this point, I don't view the city as an enemy. There have been times that have created an animosity between our board and the city of Eugene. What we see now is a problem that they have and we have. We can have a solve here, and I don't. the people that work in Eugene Parks and Recreation are friends of mine, so they're not anywhere near enemies. But the agency has done some damage to us, and that's where, there's some heated animosity that comes off. So, but to get to your point, Mr. Sorensen, I think that a feasibility study, we could be inclusive of county parks that are within the urban growth boundary. I'm not real comfortable going, county-wide at this point. I think Jay and I had that conversation. I think at some point that could be. I mean, that's something that North Clackamas did. There's some other, there's some other ways to do it. But I think at this point that's an awfully big thing to chew. I'd really like to take the feasibility study and look at no more than the urban growth boundary at this point.
Mr. Stewart? Thanks, Mr. Chair. Well, I appreciate this conversation. Just a little bit of history for myself. I've been working with the City of Cottage Grove and the South Lake School District now for probably about 4 months, having a conversation about what should we do, or I'm a little concerned with, where we're headed with our parks opportunities, recreational opportunities down there, because as a member that sits on the South Lake School District Board, I'm getting to see the struggle that they're having maintaining all their ball fields and all their recreational opportunities for their school system. And then I'm also getting to see where the BLM, we have a beautiful rails to trail project that goes 22 miles, and we have essentially the BLM is unable to maintain or even upgrade that structure. We got the City of Cottage Grove that's trying to help them. But the City of Cottage Grove is just like you explained, they have many departments that they have to run that's prioritized, with public safety first on down the line. So they're getting by, but if we continue down the same road, the handwriting's on the wall, there's going to need to be some changes, or else it's going to, the opportunities are going to, we're going to see a diminishing factor on that. So that being said, my conversations, I can't compare apples to apples in this situation because, down in Cottage Grove we're pretty much in compression or close to compression with using property taxes. So we immediately told ourselves, well, the district is really going to be very difficult, especially if we form a district with the expectations it's going to be funded by property taxes. A district could be used with a different taxing mechanism. But one thing that I threw out there that both the city and the school district are going to work with their respective bodies here in the next couple months is, I serve on the Metro Wastewater Commission. I asked myself, well, what would be wrong with potentially taking a baby step, create a commission? Take that commission where we start working together. One of the things that the city manager in Cottage Grove was saying, I have a hard time supporting another complete new district that's going to need a finance department, a collection system, administrative duties. I've already got all that. So how can we use the current services that we provide together that doesn't cost us any more money, but maybe helps us find efficiencies in the way that we deliver service. So that's going to be the conversation that we're going to have down in Cottage Grove. Also looked at who are our potential next partners. If we can get the commission established with 2 partners today, start building trust with the focus on recreational opportunities and infrastructure in Cottage Grove, then our next partners might be our local South Valley Athletics might be able to do that in. Maybe Lane County might want to consider some of the parks in our area to see if there's efficiencies that could be gathered with the BLM, potentially either relinquish their trail and other potential parks to the commission to be operated. So that's kind of the model that we've been taking there. I don't know that that's something I support and believe a feasibility study is probably the next step. It would be nice maybe to throw a commission conversation into that feasibility study to see if that made more sense instead of you already have a district. Maybe we take the 2 districts, maybe it is a partnership between Lane County and the Parks District, form a different whole different entity where we bring things together, resources and infrastructure, manpower, and act together, and maybe disperse it out in a different manner. And the bottom line is we're also going to have to find another funding mechanism. I've been on this board for 11 years, and trust me, when I first got in here and we started trying to tackle the public safety answer, realizing property taxes are difficult. I mean, we analyzed this, we have even been a part of the conversation, every possible mechanism for raising money. And I think I'm going to remain optimistic that I believe that the citizens believe they trust the organization, they believe in the service that they're providing. I think they would entertain other sources of revenue. But if we can't get those first two steps established critically, and so that might be what we try to do in the short term, is a partnership, some type of a structure, not knowing what it is, with the focus on this recreational opportunity. Can we see how we can tackle or can we continue to build on the trust and believe that this is an important service, and then have some dedicated funding source for it that we ask the citizens to support, whatever our boundaries end up being, if it's the urban growth boundary or not. And I'll throw in there that I'm hoping that maybe through the Envision Eugene process that we might have a conversation of maybe the county taking back some of the permitting opportunities in the unincorporated areas, especially if citizens can come to us and do what they want to do, if it's just an addition or maybe it's just a house that they would have the commission, the ability to do under the county. But the fact of the matter is if they want to capitalize on bringing themselves into the city, want to be annexed, and they want denser development in that, then they're going to need to do that, because we don't have the ability to do that. But I do think that I'd like to have that conversation. I know we've had it on and off with this board over the years and different boards, and I never really went anywhere, but I'd like to continue to have it because it is impacting you, and that might be a way to help short term, keep some dollars in your pocket. So I welcome this conversation, and I'd like to see how I can productively be a supporter and a contributor to it. One other piece I wanted to ask you, Gail, is have you talked with the Chester Public Lands at all? The Chester Public Lands partnered with Atlanta Lane. They did an Atlanta Lane's feasibility study, which led to their strategic plan. And then from the strategic plan, the Chester Public Lands also went out and did a capital campaign, which they were the major party that helped them get their recent capital improvements funding measure passed. So I think as we look at individuals that might do feasibility, if this board decides they want to partner, I think we should have a conversation with them. And they bring a lot of assets.
Contact from Bob.
Bob told me, because we were considering them down there in Cottage Grove, that the Chester Public Lands paid for 50% of that feasibility study that they did for Lane. So they bring some assets to the table and connections, and they're very successful with their campaigns.
Very cool.
Mr. Chair, first of all, I want to say thank you very much for taking the time out this morning to be here. Maybe a question for Councilor Pryor, and the reason why is because Councilor Pryor, with his experience and quite a bit of experience at Lima Lane Park and Recreation District. So the aftermath of the Thurston shooting, we formed this group we call Team Springfield. And frankly, I don't want to put you on the spot, Chris, with this first imagination, but I think what that did is really open up a significant dialogue between all agencies within the city of Springfield. Now Lane County has a commissioner who's the former mayor of the city of Springfield, and actually I have either a monthly face-to-face or a monthly phone call with Mayor Lumberg. Thursday I'm having coffee with Councilor Piscinari. It's really about dialogue, and I think while I agree with Commissioner Stewart on the public land, the trust of public lands that being involved. It really was, it's also about each of the agencies stepping aside and allowing the other agency to go out for, whether it's a bond measure, a capital measure, this type of thing, and it's that constant dialogue, and then you get the whole community on board. So I guess, Chris, the question I have for you is that, is there interest with the city of Eugene having kind of the same type of makeup, where you have these separate districts, you know, I mean, River Road Park District is set up, I'm assuming, the same way as Lorama Lane, is that correct? So is there an interest there where the city of Eugene is maybe having these type of dialogues as well, where you're not just supplying money, but you're actually providing support in different types of measures? Because I think these are key. We don't have a large unincorporated area in Springfield, but we do have Glenwood. And Lorama Lane, obviously, in fact, I believe that's the very first park that Lorama Lane ever had, it was the one in Glenwood. And so you obviously have that in place, so that's an unincorporated area. The city of Springfield is actually now responsible for all the planning jurisdiction, while most of the area of Glenwood is still part of Lane County, within the UGB. So it's all part of Lane County. But again, it's the dialogue. And so while I'm visiting with Glenwood residents, as they're getting a little antsy about the Glenwood refinement plan, it allowed me to communicate immediately with Mayor Lundberg and say, hey, listen, citizens are a little uptight here. So while I had one visit with the citizens in Glenwood, then Springfield came with their entire staff and actually brought forth, instead of their reading in the Register Guard or rumors, then they get the facts straight. So I guess my question, Chris, is there that interest with the city of Eugene maybe taking a look at having that kind of that Team Springfield dialogue with the districts that you have within your, in a sense, your, is this in the UGB or not? In the UGB. So that's my question.
I think it depends on who is having the conversation. I mean, there's a lot of people in Eugene who are having different conversations about this because their perspectives are different. Talking about parks and recreation there's no way you can't have that conversation without talking about Santa Clara River Road, this wedge right into the middle of Eugene. So the fact that ultimately at some point in the future, Santa Clara River Road will become a part of Eugene, then it immediately brings in the conversation what do park and recreation services look like. And some folks, to your question, if you mention the word special purpose district, they're absolutely adamantly opposed to it. We talk about public safety, we talk about fire, we talk about a number of different reasons. And you mention the word special purpose district, they say, no way in hell, can't do it. Others, myself included, who worked for a special purpose district for 20 years. So I have no fear of them, and I know they work extremely well in partnership with municipal and school and other agencies. So I was willing to have the conversation. I think at the bottom, the element that is most important is what's best for the patrons in that area. And what will be, not just today or in 5 years, but in the future, what will be best for them. I think that's the conversation that everybody starts on the same place, but then I think you wait productive and where we go from there. But yeah, that conversation is taking place, but you're getting different answers depending on who you're talking about.
I guess what the only thing I can really offer up, and because I'm taking the lead more from Commissioner Bozovich or Commissioner Farrar, because I think they understand the area much better than I do, but it's really just to offer up just personal experience, and I think you laid it out perfectly. Lorama Lane, to me, I would rate up against any park district in the state, and maybe even on the West Coast, to be honest with you. I just think that they do a terrific job, but I think it goes beyond that. I think what happens is that the reason why they get such positive community support is because all of a sudden you have not just the city, the school district, I mean, you have the utility board, for crying out loud. We're all involved in that conversation. And so it allows for Lorama Lane to continue out with the successes that it has, whether it's the the wave pool. Now, of course, the sports center has just grown beyond what I ever imagined it to grow beyond. It's pretty unbelievable. It's that way because we wrote the contract. First right of refusal, formally, in the very beginning. So, thank God, they were willing to step up and take it over. But I really think it's a dialogue issue as much as anything, and so that's really what I could offer up at this point in time is just my experience as much as anything, and of course working closely with Commissioner Bozovich and Commissioner Farr on because they have more of the experience there than I do. But that's really something I would offer up. I think it would go a long way down that road. But thanks, Chris, for that. Again, appreciate you all being here this morning.
Commissioner Farr.
Thanks. Very little to say other than in response to what Chris and Sid have talked about. The natural competing interest there. And the people that you're talking about who have no interest in a special interest district, whether it be park or whatever it may be out in that area, I know who they are, and there's always going to be that competition. When I was in the legislature, Bob Ackerman and I kind of led the charge, which ultimately turned out to be kind of vetoed by the city of Eugene regarding annexation and what's the self-determination of the people being annexed. So it's, I think that's one of the things that we have to overcome is how do we get all the people to the table to talk about it and figure out Chris nailed it. What's best for the patrons? It's not a territory. It's not a jurisdiction. It's what's best for the people who are serving. And you guys are serving them, I think, unilaterally better than the city of Eugene is serving them. Because if you go to Bethel, until recently our parks were a non-entity in Bethel. Marshall can talk about that for years. But parks have grown in Bethel, but they haven't yet in Churchill. So the city of Eugene has a large interest in a much broader geographic area that doesn't necessarily care about what we do in River Road, and what happens to our great park in River Road. So it's getting people to the table and getting folks to agree with us that what's best for the people who live here, what's the best for the people whose kids are going to that park all summer long. So.
And to that point, it's one of those things for the next 20 years. I've looked at every other aspect, every other way to try to fund what we're going to do. I mean, City of Eugene, the people who work there are awesome. Some folks at those community centers really knock it out. But they're so limited in funding, and I just don't see how that's going to change. And so for the future, what is the future? It makes me nervous that we partner with privatized recreation to patch the gap, because then you're still taking tax money for parks and recreation, or you're giving it away to somebody you can't really authorize what goes on there. And that could be the future. I mean, down in Southern California, way back when, they went to that, after their tax measure hit, that's exactly what you had. You had a strip mall full of privatized recreation, which provided some of the service, but you had no jurisdiction over it. You had no reason of what was there and what was done. It's a complex thing, and there are people on both sides of the fence. I went up against it a lot of times in the last 4 years, but I just think it's worth at least looking at. I really, if at the end of the day, if everybody says, no, that doesn't work, then we just walk away from it. But I think it's
Information is power. So I'm fully supportive of the idea of doing some sort of study to determine if there is any links to this. One of the challenges I've talked with Dale about is if you wanted to create a special purpose district that had a future, it would need to encompass Eugene, because that's ultimately what's going to be the jurisdiction in the future. And so a vote to create a special purpose district would have to be a Eugene-wide vote. So the question becomes, what does a person in Ward 8, Ward 6, Ward 5 see as a reason to create a special purpose district to benefit, in their mind, just River Road. So you would have to create, this is what we talked about, a benefit that they could see in their own ward. That's the reason for the study, is that possible to do? Is it possible to persuade somebody near Churchill High School that they would want to vote to create a new taxing district with the cost, the property tax, the administration, everything else, that they would see a tangible benefit? Wayne talks about swimming pools. There used to be more swimming pools in Eugene than there are now because they're very expensive to run. And so to say, well, we'll give you a swimming pool isn't necessarily what you can do. I think the value of the study is to say, are there any legs to creating the will within the entire city of Eugene to support the idea of a special purpose district? If not, what would the city of Eugene be willing to support?
I can slip myself in the queue before you finish your point. So, just as a quick, maybe, question to get at what's in it for the rest of Eugene, what's your deferred maintenance backlog in the park system?
It's pretty substantial. And we made a decision several years ago to take parks out of the recreation system, so they're now in two different places. And I think that works reasonably well, since maintenance for parks and maintenance for other things works pretty well. But now you're talking about an increased level of complexity in what you would do.
Yeah, but that's part of, one of the things I'm aware of, and as I look at this, for me, my experience as an engineer at EWEB, which is a municipal corporation, different from the special district, the separate governing board and all that, was inheriting water districts that had gone belly up, special districts that eventually got annexed bit by bit to the point where they eventually just,
Similar problem.
And they were absorbed by the EWEB system, and the worst infrastructure we had to maintain and replace for those abandoned and dissolved districts. And, so I see this future of River Road Parks with the annexations to eventually get to that point. And there's a wonderful asset there. As an engineer, I'm an asset manager, and there's this huge asset in that park, and I don't want to see it eventually deteriorate due to lack of funds. And when the city does eventually take in that dissolved district into their system, they've got a huge liability in a rundown facility. And what's happening currently in the Eugene Park and Rec system, even though they're kind of separated, is your assets are deteriorating right now. No different than our road systems are. We're not keeping up with the maintenance and renewal and replacement of those assets. And there needs to be a funding stream that takes care of that. And it's not just, and then let alone the operation and maintenance daily of those systems and providing the services. I mean, there's just, lots of conversations out in Santa Clara, like the Eagles property out there and opening a new community park out there. You guys can get property, but you have no funds to actually, construct the actual thing and then run it and maintain it. So Santa Clara is this desert for parks right now, even though there's actually properties available. And in fact, Envision Eugene's taking in additional land for a regional park out there. Good luck on constructing and maintaining it in your budget right now. So it's not just River Road Parks alone that's got this issue. So there needs to be a serious look, whether it's a special district, whether it's, a municipal corporation like EWEB, I don't know what the answer is. Under current law, it's very difficult. What I can say is we can't just keep passing sewer levies. It's not a sustainable funding model. Because we've got jail levies, we've got, you guys have the library levy on the ballot, they've got their levies to continue it. We keep just trying to pile on levy after levy, and we're all in an election cycle. Different agencies got a levy on every ballot. Eventually the voters are just going to go nuts on us. There's got to be a long-term sustainable funding model.
Which is why I stayed at the table, because I think fundamentally you're right.
Yeah, so I fully support the idea of the feasibility study. I think it needs to be broad. It needs to look beyond just a special district solution. We've got our own issues in Lane County parks. Our backlog a couple of years ago, deferred maintenance was $16 million. I hate to hear what it is now. It's probably pushing past 20. that car rental tax from our park system and put it towards public safety or something like that, because we're desperate for money in other places. So there's a larger conversation. As an engineer, I was used to running a 20-year master plan and then also looking at 50 to 100 years out for water supply plans. So long term, there's going to have to be an overall solution for all of Lane County. You're seeing it in South Lane, all of our park and rec system, and Lane County's got a park system. We don't have an AMREC portion of it. It would be nice if we had AMREC, and I think we need to have that longer-term look and longer-term outlook. The immediate problem I see is River Road Parks as being, death by 1,000 cuts. Just like the Oakway Water District, just like the College Crest Water District, just like the Bethel Water District died the death of 1,000 cuts. And we don't want to inherit a horrible set of infrastructure because the death of this happens. That's not to mention what it does to service for those folks that are unincorporated until they get annexed. There's some good models out there. I've watched the City of Florence annex into Siuslaw Valley Fire District, and successfully so. And they've got great provision for fire services now, and did it in a very structured way. So there are models for doing those in the future and different answers. But I think we do need to take a serious look, see what is actually feasible, what's supportable, what's in it for me, for the folks from Ward 1. And I think the what's in it for them is a long-term solution to their parks and rec services, because I don't think it's sustainable for the city right now either. I mean, you're going to see River Road Parks fail first, but the city's on the same track. So, Commissioner Simmons.
I was going to, again, broaden this discussion. We're seeing some examples of consolidation of services that are very positive, and I guess the example that I'll give is the fire service with Eugene and Springfield pulling together, creating what our friends in Springfield call the Springfield Eugene Fire Department. Isn't that what it is? Isn't that what it is? No, that's right. No, I'm just hoping when KMTR moves to Eugene, right? Aren't they Eugene? It's weird. Apparently they're not aware of the I-5 boundary. Because they are Springfield TVs. Anyway, so we've had some positive work in the area of combining services where a very complicated topic, namely fire service and emergency services, gets pulled together after years and years and years of work, and all kinds of barriers that exist to combine this service. But we haven't done that, with our three major police agencies, Lane County, Eugene, and Springfield. It doesn't appear we've done that with parks, with Lane County, City of Eugene, you guys, and any other special districts that I'm not aware of. But, we've got that history of all these different agencies. And I kind of see in the fire area where I think the fire service wants to build on and that's a broad term, fire service, but the people that are involved in it, they kind of want to keep going with their efficiency and consolidation. And yet that does conflict with, as Councilor Pryor mentioned, that conflicts with the idea that cities, according to our metro plans, are the proper service provider for urban services. So I'm mainly asking Chris and the board, if they're interested in any of your feedback on whether these opportunities to create districts, or in the case of what they mentioned, using an existing district or commission, whether that's got some potential, because it doesn't seem like at the policy level in Oregon, at the above my pay grade level of initiatives and legislative changes and governors and candidates for governor. We're not really hearing, oh, I'm going to fix that whole problem back in 1997. And we are going to be stuck with this frozen system. So we can create a district, if the voters are willing to do it, and consolidate some of these services. Police agencies have not shown an interest in the consolidation. Fire agencies have. Fire agencies, I think, want to move into the unincorporated areas outside. What do you think of that idea for parks? We'll have that bigger, and you give up your autonomy. Well, Emmeline gives up its autonomy. Eugene gives up its autonomy. You guys give up your autonomy. People don't like that. Is that a no-go? You're just going to keep, every day, we are told there's another annexation. You guys lose a little bit more of the base. There was an effort to get you guys some money during the transition. That offer apparently is not really happening.
Right.
So, and what would the study show? What would you want the study to be?
I would like to see if the tax rate, the area served, everything like Chris was saying, would benefit, because it's indeed going to have to benefit Eugene too. If it would show that there was benefit for them, we would lose our autonomy. We would be joining a bigger district. It wouldn't be River Road District. It would be, and City of Eugene would be City of Eugene District. It would be a new district. We'd all lose our autonomy. But in the greater good, the model for funding for parks and recreation districts is a better model than the cities is for funding parks and recreation districts. Like I said in the presentation, before 97, it was flipped. I mean, it was just a matter of time we were going to be part of the City of Eugene. But when that was frozen, now we don't share our money with anybody. We can hunker down in bad times and take care of ourselves. They can't. You know, they have to take money from areas that are not essential and fuel those other things that they need to fuel. And so, you know, if the feasibility study shows the benefit to everybody, we lose our autonomy, but we would be funded in the same manner. So River Road Park District would still be able to mow their lawn every Thursday. And with that, you know, Amazon would be able to mow their lawn every Thursday.
Well, at Springfield, well, Emily is the best run, best funded parks agency. What about Wayne County, which has immense park needs and recreation needs, despite the fact that we don't have it in our title. We have immense recreation needs. And so what's wrong with saying, hey, rather than this be a forced marriage between an unlikely set of suitors, your district and the City of Eugene, which seems like it'd be kind of hard one to repair the kind of multi-year animosity over everything from annexation to what the level of money you're going to get. Why not add in Lamb and Wayne County to this mix, so it's not just a Eugene thing and a River Road Park thing. You've got Eugene does have major problems with its funding of its own park and recreation and open space system. It's not as viable as the Lamb thing because of the level of base, the level of rate.
Yeah, I totally agree.
I just would like to see it broader, myself. Because I really don't know where we're going on the funding of our parks. Our parks have been going down relative to need.
Right. One of the problems that you have, and I thought about it when Jay and I talked about it, because he was aiming at county parks, and I understand your dilemma. The problem is if you have a tax base and you're running a community center off of that, okay, you get that, there's a pool, but now you're going out past Bonita, you're out in,
Florence, what are you going to give those people for that tax base? You're not going to be able to do the same things that you do. So it's kind of it's an awful big football to hike. But, I'm not saying you can't look at it, but that's one of the biggest problems, I think, is that you've got to expand an area, and there's areas that I don't know how you would serve them, and I don't know why they would say yes to it, because they wouldn't get those services, they would just be paying the money.
If we make the conversation too large, I think people will be truly shut off. Their inclination is not to support large grand schemes, but if we keep it fairly modest and within the realm of possibility, I think we have much bigger chances.
You guys don't get the email and phone calls that the commissioners do. Believe me, I get, more recently, it's been about the boat ramp in Mapleton not being maintained or the facilities around Munsell Lake, but yeah, there is a lot that goes on there.
One question.
Sure.
Related to the Metro Plan, what is the status of the Metro Plan update? Was that last year? Is the county involved in that?
Yeah, Envision Eugene's in process, and I think it's scheduled to be finished in...
What I'm interested in that is the concept of this regional, or what the boundaries are, is the concept of this regional project should be incorporated in the Metro Plan. If you look at down 30 years from now, that we're addressing this issue in the Metro Plan also. It's the idea so that the public understands that the Metro Plan is also looking at the issue.
And just so you know, I brought that conversation up with the city of Eugene about the Metro Plan prohibition on special districts and whether or not that should be pulled from the Metro Plan or not. We've had that discussion relative to not only parks but also public safety districts because it got to be such an issue. So that is in the conversations right now for the Envision Eugene portion. Springfield's going through a minor amendment right now for industrial lands, so there may be an opportunity to talk to them also. So Sid, I had you in the queue, but Dale, did you have something to add?
Back to Commissioner Sorensen for 1 second. If we were to expand the conversation, I think one of the things that we could look at, as I was thinking after listening to what you're saying, that North Clackamas Parks District is a county district. It would be probably a model we could take a look at and see how they do that. I mean, maybe they have a different source of funding for the people in their community as opposed to, I don't know how they work it, but that would be the one model that in the city or in the state that I know.
Is their district a county
It's a county district governed by the county commissioners. And yet it's park and recreation, we have that wave pool, it's a tremendous district, but it's run by the county.
Was their base set up separate from their county base?
They have a tax base that's really, really small, and they tried to defect from the county to create a special service district, and they lost by about 40 votes. So they're going to come back and do that. It really is hard, and I think that's one of the problems, that you've got people outside of the area that are paying for stuff that are inside the area that they represent having to pay for. But it's one place we could look.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to actually ask a separate question, but I think Commissioner Sorensen has opened up something. I think there's a dialogue that we probably should get beyond just talking about and actually really bring folks in and talk about park and recreation for all of Lane County and what we can do to really, I think, move that conversation forward. And in fact, so much so that I'd be looking at the Special Districts Association and asking if there's a potential that maybe they would be the facilitator and of something, because I think you need somebody from the outside to actually facilitate it, but actually have this ongoing conversation. Pete brings something up I think is a good piece, and that's the Eugene Springfield Eugene so, but I think what's important on that, again, this was a dialogue issue, because the fire chief prior to Chief Groves was a hard boundaries fire chief. He had no interest whatsoever in working together. It was hard boundaries, and I got to tell you, there was some angst that went on between Chief Murphy and Chief Talon. And it was actually when Chief Rose was hired, that's when the 3rd Battalion was first created, which then led into what we see today at the Eugene Springfield Fire and Life Safety, with one chief. Chief Rose handles the entire operation. So again, that was a dialogue. That was a conversation. Without I give a lot of credit to Chief Rose on that, because Chief Murphy was there a long time ago and knew that this was the wave and this is really how they operate. I think police services would be challenging because Eugene has the auditor, Springfield does not. I think that you'd have to sit down and talk about how you coordinate these things. They do a lot of back and forth and coordination with each other, but to get to that fire life safety that Eugene Springfield does, I think you're going to have that would be a significant conversation between the two cities. But on parks, see, I think that this is an opportunity, where we can maybe get into a room, talk, bring the different districts together and talk about what are some things that we can do and work together. Because the reality is, I think we've said it, until there's serious tax reform in this state, I think people are going to say, you know what, I'm sick and tired of paying for every levy there is. The answer is no, from here on out. And guess what, we're going to continue to struggle because of the Measure 4750 piece that happened back in 97, I think is when that was. And so I think this is an opportunity now to really talk about what are some things we can do. And it sounds like you may be open to that. I'd be more happy to sit down with not just Bob Kiefer, but I think the Willamette board. I think you can start with Senator Beyer, who's still on the Willamette board, and talk to him about, hey, what about this, having a much larger conversation about the Park and Rec District? Because if you look at surveys, this is what's interesting in Springfield, the surveys over a 20-year period, the environment, that type of thing was way down the totem pole. It's probably 3rd or 4th when you look at the survey today. People want to see urban recreation more and more. People want to see that within their communities. They want to see parks and open space. And I think that's the reason why Willamette Lane continues to have the success, because the community's minds continues to change. I think that's the same with Lane County. I think people are interested. We have great parks. It's just, as Jay said, it's the maintenance backlog that's going to cause them to have challenges in the future. So I'm all for the idea of getting into a room and bringing the groups together and talk about how can we really focus on park and recreation, how can we partner into the future. So that's something I would add, and I thank Pete for that, opening that dialogue. I think it's key.
Councilor Ford.
Part of the success for the fire and life safety merger was that it wasn't a special purpose district.
No, it
I think
wasn't.
if that word had come up in the context of the conversation, there were folks who would have driven a knife into it.
Yeah, I agree.
It happened very organically, it happened very slowly, and it happened through exactly what you're talking about, a lot of dialogue among the actual service providers, so they never lost sight of the fact this was supervised service to the people in the area. Maybe there is a model in here for that kind of conversation. I think if we keep talking about the word district, there's some folks that are just naturally going to be scared of it and are going to fight it. But if you have the idea, let's have a conversation to see how we could coordinate, cooperate, or even collaborate our services and what we do for the greater benefit of the patrons. There may be a lot of good, constructive things that can come out of that conversation, because I know that is really where all the people in Eugene and Wells River Road, that is really their bottom line. As long as you can not get everybody all worked up over the district word, you can have a fruitful conversation, and it may lead to something that may be very positive, but at least you keep kind of the institution out of it.
Thank you. And, going back to what Dave was talking about, a feasibility study, I hate the thought, the term feasibility study, but getting all of it on the table, what is it we're talking about right now? But we don't just talk around the table like this. There are a lot of different concepts that are being thrown out. The Eugene Springfield Fire District, Tom Talon was against any form of consolidation. And if you look at what his background was, when you compare it to Randy's background, he grew up here. And he saw the benefit of it because of the service to the people who live there. And you keep coming back, Chris, to the service to the people, what service are we providing to the people, not what district are we providing, what service are we providing. And at the county, we have boat ramps. How many boat ramps do we have? For instance, we have buildings. There are a lot of them. But that being said, you drive to Florence and you pass Knowles Creek Park. Knowles Park. And who is that, a state park? Is that a county park? Who's park? I know it's closed. That's all I know. But I happen to know it's not a county park. But I do soon. But so the discussion goes beyond urban parks and our rural parks. You have the state parks that are also involved in there, and they've done it too. So how can we provide a better park system that's going to... So that when I take Debbie, my wife, to see the head, she says, "Does our county park pass word here?" I say, "No, it's not a county park." "What? It's not a county park? It's in the county." "Or it's a state park." Folks are confused by that, and that has to be a part of the discussion is how do we deconfuse people and talk about the service rather than the boundaries that are set up. And in Eugene, we passed a huge parks bond, and so people in Bethel say, "Well, why are you improving our park?" Well, because it was mainly for parkland acquisition, and so Eugene buys more parkland, which is more parkland that they can't maintain. So it's we're pulling in different directions at all times. I think combining what Faye and Chris are saying, how are we trying to serve the people, and how can we have a better discussion about it? And I'm going to ask Sid too. Douglas County has a library district. They do. And Eugene has recreation in the library. It's LRCS library. Where does the discussion end? Is it library and parks? Is it library, recreation, cultural services and parks district? And how do we fund it? But it's all worthy of conversation because I know that Douglas County's library is fantastic and that it serves the entire county, which it goes all the way to Reedsport and all the way to the crest of the Cascades. So it's, the discussion is broader than how do we work in this little fiefdom here. If I lived within a few hundred yards of Amazon Park, I wouldn't give a rip about what's going on in River Park because my park is just perfect if I lived within a few hundred feet of Amazon Park. So why would I even care about how you get this stuff? There's got to be a bigger conversation. There's got to be about how do we serve.
In Douglas County, they do have this little family foundation called the Family Foundation. It's happening just once a month.
Commissioner Stewart, you give another family table. Thanks. Well, I appreciate this. Lots of great ideas. But I would want to throw out one word of caution. And I think that if there's one thing that I've learned serving as a county commissioner is that it's very, very difficult to fix a huge problem with one answer, one solution. I think we've finally had some success by taking specific small steps forward. And that just leads me back to the conversation here that we're having today. I appreciate maybe we should have something countywide at some point, but that's a huge conversation. And I think it's simple to draw, on a map, which we don't have today, but draw on a map, what we should be focused on. And it should be entirely the River Road Sanitary District, and it should be some area that maybe improves some city jurisdiction, and maybe it improves some county jurisdiction. And then have a conversation like Commissioner Carr said, who do we have at the table? I think, I'm not familiar with who provides all the services, but I assume that EWEB provides all the power. So EWEB should be at the table at some level, because they may be the person that would be willing to, if the citizens supported it, put a utility fee for parks or recreation commission on their bill that hits everybody in that district, and they're willing to pay for it. And I have to agree with Councilor Pryor that district is just not. It's a difficult body to deal with now, and that leads me right back to the fact that if you had some sort of recreation commission, whatever the name is, and we don't have to have a metro plan amendment, I don't believe. I'd like to have my attorney tell us that, but I don't think we'd have to have a metro plan amendment to create a commission, which is a 190 agreement with whoever the principal bodies are. If it's Lane County, Eugene, and Santa Clara Parks and Rec District. That's all it takes. And then how do we put dedicated money into that? Because if that's another thing I learned on this board is that you have to dedicate the funds to the service, and it cannot be touchable by anything else. Years ago, before I was on this commission, the commission passed a car rental tax specifically for funding the parks. I.e., 75% of that money, because it didn't need it all, was going to parks. Today, because it wasn't physically dedicated to parks in a specific fund, and because state statute allowed it to be used for other services, guess what? I think 25% of that money now goes to parks. So those are things that I think need to be thought out and worked out. I would suggest that, I'm hearing a ton of energy around this table. I think that the logical thing to do is potentially, I would offer it that we form a working committee. And the working committee would, hopefully include, somebody from Eugene, somebody from the county. I have energy. I'd be willing to participate in it if with multiple individuals, and then use that to kind of draft what a feasibility study would be going after, and then bring that draft to all the bodies and get their agreement to do the feasibility. Then we can figure out who's going to do it, how it's going to get paid for it, and then kind of move this conversation forward. And if it's successful, it'll grow. It doesn't have to be the answer for the entire county today. But if it's successful and the people that we're serving with this potential body, commission or district or whatever it is, successful, it will grow and it'll become something that can be duplicated or its boundary can move. Those are some thoughts I have. Is that a motion? This is a work session.
I disagree with the district concept being fatal. I think all you have to do is tell the voters that if you give $1,000 for Parks and Recreation, you're going to get $1,000 worth of Parks and Recreation, and there's going to be no rating of the funds. I think that would go a long way, in my mind, to passing it.
I wouldn't disagree with you in some ways, and that's kind of what Commissioner Stewart was just echoing is whatever gets set up for additional revenue, having it guaranteed that it's going to be dedicated and non-rateable is part of what's going to make it acceptable to the public. And that could be in the form of a district, because districts are set up for a specific function, or it could be set up in just like we did with the jail levy, where we put it in a special fund and it's not transferable. But the issue with the district is there's a certain amount of to either expand or form a district, we have the whole issue of the metro plan right now and the prohibition against it. Then secondary to that is then you're under the jurisdiction of the district board, and you're asking other jurisdictions to give up autonomy, which is where it has some issues. So that's kind of, I think we need to look at all those things, because basically the city of Florence gave up their autonomy for fire protection to Siuslaw Valley, so it's not that it hasn't ever been done. But they've been contracting Siuslaw Valley for those services all along anyhow. So this is not the model. The City of Eugene has not been contracting for years and years for River Road Parks to provide their parks and recs. So they'll be a little bit more difficult for people to accept being annexed into a new district or an expanded district. And for the folks on the city council then to give up their autonomy at the same time. So I think it's one of the solutions we should look at, but not the only one.
Yeah, I think both you and Commissioner Stewart have hit the nail right on the head. I think there can be some really productive conversation as long as it doesn't appear to be threatening the autonomy or the authority of the different bodies involved. And as soon as they start to feel that their authority or their autonomy is being threatened, they'll try to shut down the conversation, which would not not be to our best advantage. So following the pathway that's being suggested where, and this is similar to what fire did, the authority and autonomy of the two different municipalities was not threatened by that, bringing together services. That model, I think, could be written. So I like that idea.
Yeah, and I think, it's no different than, if the city was talking about, well, the solution to this is annexation of the River Park District into the city. That's going to be a no-go for the board on the Park District, because you're asking them to give up their autonomy. Because that's, I've heard that answer too from the other side. Why don't those folks just annex in the city and then that's... Yeah. So, and we know that there's a long history. I mean, I lived in unincorporated River Road for a number of years, so I'm aware of the history there. It goes back to the 80s, 1980 actually.
So your suggestion then is, with the commission being that area, we're not calling it a district, but it would be a commission, but we have a dedicated funding for that area? Is that, am I hearing that right?
Possibly. I think the conversation is to outline a feasibility study.
Depending on what the body is, I think ultimately needs to have dedicated funding. Because that is the crux of it, really. I mean, the bottom line, the really bottom line of this whole thing is that Lamb Lane is an absolutely perfect example. They don't share their money. The money is dedicated, and if we, so they can plan for the future. They go out and do a bond issue, and they start building paths and doing stuff, and it's awesome. So all the bills in the same way. But the key is they don't share their money. It's not being pulled apart from fire, police, or whatever. People are paying into that. Understand that. So whatever that mechanism is, if the commission, I'm on board with that. But that would be the part for River Road, and I'm sure Eugene too. We want to know that the money that was being put into that was going to be put hard on it.
So it sounds like next steps-wise, there needs to be some conversations about forming a working group. It sounds like Councilor Pryor and Councilor Surratt are pretty interested in this. Maybe we can get them to participate in that working group. There's Commissioner Stewart's already doing significant work down the South Lane. I've been pretty energized around this myself, or Commissioner Farr. We have to be careful about not putting a majority in a working group.
And I'm still but.
Yeah. So maybe,
I live 500 yards from Amazon.
But, we can get less than a majority of your board involved, less than the majority of the city council involved, less than the majority of the county commissioners involved, maybe some of the executive director and administrator, maybe the city administrator can, appoint some folks from staff to talk, and that working group can outline what a feasibility study should look at, and possibly maybe even find out an approximate cost and some potential providers for that feasibility study. We could look at anything from a 190 commission to expanding a special district. I don't want to put boundaries on that at this point until we start having a little bit more conversation. But should I leave that, Dale, in your hands maybe to try and form that working group at this point?
Would it be reasonable to ask Mr. Mulcahy to work with Dale on that?
Yeah, I was going to say, and I'd ask Dale to see to work with Dale on that. And, obviously,
We'll have a good time.
I'll let Councilor Pryor speak with Councilor Surratt, and maybe
The mayor probably would have to make a formal appointment, but we could request that we do that.
and the mayor and John about that also. But I think it's been a great conversation this morning. I think we're all pretty aware of the long term is not sustainable, and it's a service to our community that is near and dear to the community. It's not an essential service, but it's one that everybody loves. I mean, parks and rec is, it's like libraries. Sorry, it's hard to get anyone to say, I don't like having this.
And I guess I would just, my final note is that I've learned over the last 10 years how important parks are to the community. I've completed it. We've been working the last 10 years on a park in Center Cottage Grove, 15 acres. And I've got to watch that transition. And we're able to fundraise and able to improve it more and more. This last year, we were able to install a $250,000 playground structure. And I cannot believe what that's done in our community. I mean, it's just mind-boggling. I cannot believe when you show up at 10 o'clock or 9 o'clock at night to clean bathrooms and get them locked up, there's 30 kids and their parents playing on that playground. And it's all day long. I mean, somebody is busing kids from Eugene over the summer down there to play on that playground. And then the other thing that I really was an eye-opener for me personally was I didn't realize how diverse my community was. It was unbelievable as I just kind of watched people and as they started to come and use the facility. Where are these people coming from? I know they must live in our community, but I didn't realize, whether they were Hispanic or whether they were, whatever background they were, whatever. I just wow, this is really incredible. So, these services are vital for community health and for us to be, I think, healthy in lots of different ways, whether it's mentally or physically. It's great for us to form relationships and fellowship, and so, we got to protect these services, and we also need to understand they need to improve. They don't need to diminish them.
Is there any other final comments? I really appreciate you all coming, and Dale for initiating the meeting, and everybody for coming to attend. Thank you, Counselor, and board members for being here. And with that, I think we're adjourned.
Thank you so very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.